Hey, I thought I'd do one final update to this for the time being until I eventually go to change those high voltage cap in the amplifier. You know, as what usually happens, 9 times out of 10, you know, you fix one thing and then a day or two later something else quits, right? Well, I had the amp working right, and then 2 days later, one of the lights here on my MFJ meter that sits on top of it that I'm using to tune it with burn out. I'm like, never fails. Fix one thing, and then something else quits in return. But you can see how that light you're seeing is not real. It's not even turned on because it's just the way the fluorescent lights are hitting it. I just kind of wanted to show you when I turn it on. What I did was I spliced where the old lights were, and I used the 16 volt lights. You can probably see I had a 10 ohm resistor in there originally in series with the lights. And after looking at it, it dawned on me, this one MFJ AC adapter I'm using that I bought to go with it, I think those things are switching supplies and they probably run hot. And I was looking at the voltage and the darn thing runs right at 13.89 volts. So if you round it off, it's 13.9 volts. I was going to clip on there and show you, but it's kind of hard for me to do with the phone in my hand. I should be using my tripod, I guess, but this is just going to be the first part of the video. Then the rest, there's a couple things I forgot to mention on the amp, and I want to point that out in the second part of this video, and then this whole video will be the last one for a while. But this is that big, cheap MFJ meter. MFJ sold before they went out of biz, and hey, they're okay. But see, like I said, I RTV'd the new lights in there, and when I turn it on, they light up just fine. And they're not as bright as they were, but what I did was, with that 10 ohm resistor that I already had in there for the old 12 volt lights, with that resistor, I was seeing 12.7 volts on the lamps. I thought, even though they're going to be maybe a little dimmer than what I'd want, let's put them about the same spot where I got the Ameritron lights set when they're with the regulators, and that was like 11.95 volts. I found another resistor that I put in series. It's like a 7 ohm resistor, and I just tacked it in there, and now I went back and I cleaned it up, and it's in there permanent now. But now it's 11.98 volts. Hey, that's close enough. That's close enough. So I'm hoping these 16 volt lights, running them at like just under 12 volts, just a smidgen under 12 volts, will make them last. So I thought I thought I'd run them all the same voltage. Then if one of them quits, I'll have to maybe back it down, or maybe they'll last a long time. We'll find out. But if I put the lid on, you can probably see it a little bit better. I'm getting ready to put the lid on and take it back in the shack, and then it's kind of hard to see. They're bright, but they're bright enough, but these fluorescent lights here on my bench are just killing me here trying to make the video. So let's stop this, and we'll go in the shack here with it on top of the amp all hooked back up. Okay, I thought I'd do this when the lights are off here in the shack, and those meter lights look pretty good on that meter now, don't they? So they have 11.98 volts on them as compared to the 11.95 volts, and they're all 16 volt lamps. So let's see how long these last. And anyway, the things that I forgot to mention about this amplifier were that two things. I forgot to explain what I found on the input tuning. I mentioned it, and I thought the tube might have been broader, but here's the deal. With the tube that was in here, that RF Parts 3-500 Zulu, the one that I showed you, that I thought looked like a piece of it was pretty cheaply made. I don't know whether it's a Penna Laboratories tube or whatever, but the one I have in here now is heavy duty, and I'm thinking that maybe what happened was with the old tube, what I've discovered was the tube was soft when I got it. However, looking at remember I told you I was going to tune the input, the tuned input board, and I saw that it had that reddish, orangey, that cement thing they used in the old days to seal pots so you couldn't turn them anymore, just like that's where the factory settings were, so they put that stuff on them so they wouldn't move. Well, those are still in the same spot. And on the old tube, it didn't matter what band I was on. I always had to use the antenna tuner because with these new modern radios, radials. I was just out and back looking at my antenna radios when I'm getting ready to do to it. So these modern radios, these antenna tuners kind of compensates for not having the proper input tuning on these tube amps, right? So the Visuar is usually kind of high, it's usually 2.5 or something like that to 1, if not higher sometimes. And then when you hit the antenna tune button on these radios, it tunes it down flat, and on some bands it makes the output power come up because the input tuning was so off, and that's what that old tube did. Now I remember, because I was thinking about it, and I remember when I first got this amp about 3 to 4 years ago, that I searched around online to see what information I could find. I went through some of the forum boards, and I found all this article or all the posts people had posted, and nobody had made a post about this amp in quite a while. And I looked, there was one guy that said, I think he had that same RF parts tube, but he was noticing why, like when he was on 20 meters, when he would tune up and the power would be like a certain level, and then when he would hit the AT on his modern radio, the reflected power would go down like completely flat, and the actual power on the amp would come up, which is the same thing I was seeing on this one. But I think he had the same RF parts tube. I'm not positive whether his tube was soft like mine and that's what was causing the issue. But with this new tube, I don't have any input Visuar. It doesn't matter what band I'm on, it's 1-to-1. And the funny thing is, here on 17 meters, on the 15 meter position, on the original 15 meter tap with the original 15 meter tuned input setting, it just, when I get on here, it'll move to this, you always hear it see one LED when you get up, when you do a SWR. You always see like one of them, the first one will be lit up. This one, when you modulate, it would go up just to the second one. And if I readjust my manual tuner up here, my Nye Viking tuner, which I'm going through right now, I can actually get that to where it won't even move. I just have to make the input more flat, by adjusting this knob all the way and just tweaking the tuner. You have to kind of do it with some slight modulation to get it back, because as you modulate, your actually the output impedance of like your tank circuit is changing a little bit. So that's kind of why you gotta, if you gotta actually adjust the SWR a little bit. You got to actually adjust the load that's on the output, because it will affect the tuning. It will affect the load and the plate. But what I noticed is, even on, like I said, the 15 meter band position in the original tap, like I said, it just barely moves up to the next LED. It just starts to illuminate it. And if I adjust the tuner and everything and the knobs, I can get it to where it won't do that. But it'll only ever go up that high on, it doesn't matter what band I'm on. So here I'm on 18 sub meg. When this amp was tuned, the setting where I'm selected on the band I'm on, it was tuned for like 21 some odd megacycles, and I'm doing it here on 18, and it's just the Visuar still flat. So I just use the antenna tuner on all the time, so I don't have to ever, that way even the first tick mark won't even come on. But anyway, that's the first interesting thing that I discovered. So I'm thinking that maybe this other tube has lower input capacitance. Maybe those RF parts tubes are so cheap that they're just, maybe the input capacitance is high. Or maybe that guy's tube that made that post years ago, and when I found on this one, we just both had a soft tube. Who knows? But that's all I'm going to say about that. I can't prove it one way or the other, but I have a hunch those Penalab tubes, they're probably Penalab tubes. Those RF part tubes they were selling, those ZGs, probably have a higher input capacitance at the cathode. That would be my first best guess. If not, it's just that guy and me both had soft tubes, which could have very well been it. So I'm just saying, if I was a betting man, which bet that I'd make first, which guess I would pick first. So anyway, and it's just a guess, but that's kind of what, it's probably one or the other. And then now the second thing, that everybody tunes up these old tube amps, right? And You know, if you've seen me when I've been doing these ones here for the 10-meter band on AM, I always adjust the load for, you know, max modulation with the load. I mean, because a lot of times when you modulate like on AM, say, it'll actually, the power will go backwards until you readjust the load. And I started thinking about it. What everybody does, and most of the manuals tell you, is it's just either you have a tune position or you have like your CW position, which is essentially the same thing. And you know, when you do that, you can get the power up. You know, this thing will come up to about 800 watts. However, if I go to sideband and I key the mic and I go ah, and I try to hold a heavy solid tone there, do I get up just about all the way, but not all the way, and I adjust the load, it'll come up to just a hair bit over 1,000. And that's what you want to do. Then you go to CW, you know, adjust the plate, and then go back to phone and go ah, and readjust the load again. And then go back and touch up the plate, and you pretty much got it. Just go over it twice like that. And that, believe it or not, that's the proper way to tune these amps. However, the owner's manuals never tell you. Do they say, I'd have to go back and look through them, I could be wrong, but do they say use a two-tone test? If not, they should. On phone, you need, that's what you got to do. You don't tune these things up on CW, even on SSB. And everybody thinks, well, because it's on SSB, you just tune it for a maximum carrier output on CW and you're done. No, you want to use a modulated tone. You can use like a two-tone, or just, but you best way to do it would inject a 1 kilohertz tone in your mic jack or something and do it that way. But then at the same time, that's going to peak it up all the way. In this amp, the current will go higher than the tube's rating, which, as long as it just bounces up there every now and then, it's not going to hurt it. But if I hold it there, that's why I do kind of an audio tone. I go ah and hold it where it's not going to be at its max peak, you know, PEP level, but it'll be close enough for my average, more than close enough for my average voice tones. So that's kind of the way I tune mine. And it seems to work well that way, but that's how you get full power out of these amplifiers. I know a lot of guys that are running, you know, a pair of 3-500Zs, and they can only get like 1,200 watts. You should be able to get at least 2,000 watts out of those tubes if you peak it right. If you adjust the load for a modulated tone, you're going to get every bit of 1,500. If your amp's not getting the full 1,500, get on sideband and tune it that way and watch what happens. I mean, it might not, your situation could be different, but in a lot of cases, doing a modulated tone will solve your problem. That's what you have to do. You have to set the load for a modulated tone and then the plate for a straight CW carrier. And that's how you do it. So anyway, that's what the two things that I didn't really go into detail about. I realized after I posted the last video on this amp fix that I did, that I didn't go into detail and explain that, because those two things were important. The input tuning on this thing is broad as a barn now. It's flat everywhere, and you know, you adjust it on sideband, a modulated tone. If you're on AM, you'd want to do the same thing. You'd want to adjust the load for a modulated tone. Just go ah, yay, or something like that to hold it there. Try to keep a steady tone with your voice so it stays at the same level while you're trying to adjust it. And just do it intermittently. Go yay, let off of it, let it cool a bit, then go yay, and just keep doing that till you get it. And that's all you got to do. So that's all I had to say about this for now, and here I'm sounding like Forrest Gump. Well, that's all I have to say about that. Anyway, let me attach this to the first part of this video where I was showing you what I had to do to fix my meter lights, and we'll post this puppy. And this will be the last video I do on this amp for a while, unless something happens and I have to go in there. And by the way, I'm not having a problem with that tape on the bottom of the lid. That high temp tape and that high temp silicone I stuck it on that lid with is working like gangbusters. It's solid as a rock. It's not burnt, melted, or anything. So it's all set. 73s for now.